Hi, my name is Jasmine Takia, and for my project for Anthropology M116S, I'll be focusing on the Belitung shipwreck of the 9th century and the overall concept of maritime cultural landscape and how it connects to maritime archaeology. So just giving some context for the sail, in about 830 AD, an Arabian dhow, which was basically an Arabian ship of that time period, traveled from Africa to China, and on the way back, it crashed near the coast of the Belitung Island located within Indonesia. The wreck was discovered in 1998 and revealed a lot of information about trade between China and the Middle East, as well as insight into the Tang treasure. The ship was largely believed to be of Arabian origin, and there's some controversy regarding its location since it appears to be off the main route of the Maritime Silk Road. So let me just talk a little bit about what maritime cultural landscape actually is. So, as a type of definition, the concept of maritime cultural landscape is embedded in notions of how bodies of water or various associations with water, such as ships and aquatic resources, connect to broader, more significant influences of trade and communication between societies. It embodies a whole range of maritime economic activities and network of sailing routes. Regions are inherently separated by water, and this largely influences whether or not they will develop in isolation or make the effort to spread their goods and ideas to other regions via the seascape. Essentially, a cultural landscape represents how humans have interacted with the naturally derived environment and how that has shaped the course of history. So for my project, I'm mainly going to focus on the elements of maritime cultural landscape, including shipbuilding and navigation, maritime economic revenue, interaction within ports, and sea routes and trading. So here is a map of the route that was taken or was supposed to be taken by the Belitung Dhow. So setting sail from China, it was supposed to go all the way through Indonesia, past the coast of Sri Lanka, India, and all the way to the Middle East, including ports such as Muscat in Oman, Siraf, which is in Iran, as well as Basra, which is in Iraq. Here's another map that highlights some of the important ports that I mentioned and will later be going in much more detail. So let me just talk a little bit about why the shipwreck was such a big deal. First of all, it contained the biggest single collection of Tang Dynasty items, and it revealed a huge new perspective on shipbuilding of that time period. But most importantly, I would have to say it was most important for revealing trade between China and the Middle East, dating back to before 900 AD. Also, it was found to house 60,000 pieces of Chinese porcelain, which is a huge, huge deal, and a lot of those items are now located and displayed in many museums around the world. So here is just a Google map image of where the Belitung shipwreck was found. It was found off the coast of Belitung Island, which is a little east of the Sumatra Island in Indonesia. So that is just some context and placement of what region we're talking about. Now let me talk a little bit about the ship and the techniques of navigation. So as I mentioned, the ship was an Arabian dhow, and it was a wooden sailing ship that contained no nails or dowels, but instead used the material of coir. In terms of navigation, it used a traditional navigation technique of kamal, which was a way, as you can see in this picture, of measuring the height of the stars from the horizon. So that was the main traditional technique that was used for navigation on the ships. A little information about the Tang treasure. As I mentioned, there were 60,000 Chinese porcelain items found, as well as other things such as lead ingots, bronze mirrors, spices within jars, and vessels of silver and gold. So those are just some important highlights. These are some pictures of the material that was found and highlight some of the important ones. As you can see, there were a ton of different things and had a huge influence on what we perceived as Tang Dynasty treasure. Now let me talk a little about the Jewel of Muscat. So this was a type of authentic reconstruction of the Belitung ship, and it was created in order to gain insight into the building and sailing of an ancient dhow. It mainly used all traditional shipbuilding methods, and it followed the ancient sea route from China to the Middle East. The government of Oman, more specifically the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, provided the funding to enable the construction of this vessel. So that was a little bit about the Jewel of Muscat, which revealed a ton of information. These are a few pictures that highlight the importance of the construction and how it was made and how it sailed that same route that the Belitung Dhow was supposed to sail. So now I'm just going to highlight some of the important ports along the route between China and the Middle East. I'm going to be focusing on them throughout this presentation, but I'm right now just going to give a brief introduction into the ports and what I'll be going more in depth in during the Google Earth presentation. So first, the ship was supposed to have set sail in Yangzhou, which is a little bit south of Beijing within China. And here's some important pictures highlighting the port and its value within the Maritime Silk Road. After Yangzhou was supposed to travel to Guangzhou, and that is another port that's very important and had a huge influence. Afterwards, it went to Shilifoshi, which is also known as the Kingdom of Sirivijaya. Shilifoshi is the way it is pronunciated by the Chinese, and today is known as modern-day Palembang, which is another city within Sumatra. Afterwards, it went to Banda Aceh, which is also in Sumatra, but on the northern end. And then afterwards, Galle in Sri Lanka, as well as Kollam in India. So again, traveling north. And now we're going into the Middle East, Muscat, Oman, right before the entrance into the Persian Gulf, and then Siraf, Iran, which is very important port that we'll later discuss. And then finally it went to Basra, Iraq, or we're supposed to go, and that obviously there was a ton of trade between China as well as all the different ports along this region, all the way traveling to the Middle East. So as I mentioned, we're going to focus on some of the major ports along the route from China to the Middle East. This is also known as the Maritime Silk Road, so it highlights some of the important ports that we're going to be focusing on. Let's start with Yangzhou. Located within the Jiangsu province, the city of Yangzhou is also situated on the northern bank of the Yangtze River. For a long time throughout history, Yangzhou was known as one of the richest cities in China and was an important trade center for rice, silk, and salt. Crucial to its success is the presence of the Grand Canal, as well as other canals and lakes within the city center. Canals greatly facilitate trade within the city and enhance the interaction of different people and ideas between regions. Another important intersection is the Beijing-Hanzhou Canal with the Yangtze River, which contributes to the maritime triumph of Yangzhou. This economic hub reached a peak during the Ming and Qing dynasties. This was mainly because of its strategic location within the junction of three distinct bodies of water. During the time of the Maritime Silk Road route, Yangzhou was a featured player in an area in which many ships docked before continuing onto their journey to other checkpoints along the road. The Belitung Dhow most likely set sail from this area on the return journey. The Yangtze Delta region is known for its landscape diversity and productivity, and therefore this region has greatly contributed to the power of the city. This ties us back to the notion of maritime cultural landscape that was discussed earlier. Location is everything when it comes to trade and trading networks. First of all, you need to be close to a body of water that is easily accessed by ships. Also, the landscape configuration as well as the resources and commodities available within the land are highly important. Therefore, the landscape overall plays a crucial part in economic and political triumph. Now, let's move on to the city of Guangzhou. The Belitung Dhow most likely moved on to this important city after Yangzhou, and it is situated within the southern regions of China, within the Guangdong province, known for its high level of economic activity. The port in the city is situated at the intersection of three vital rivers of Dongjiang, Shijiang, and Beijing. Similar to the Guangzhou city, the productivity of the city skyrocketed during the Ming and Qing dynasties, yielding a large amount of commodities. The location yet again gives Guangzhou a majority of its success. It directly influences the port's transportation and its facilitation and communication between traders and sellers. In reference to the Belitung ship, the wreck was found to contain a lot of goods connecting to the Guangzhou region, including kilns and Changshan wares that were discovered in large jars. Therefore, it is pretty obvious that the ship stopped in Guangzhou before traveling onwards. This port acts as a link between China and the Southeast Asia. This brings us back once again to the concept of maritime cultural landscape, since it bridges the gap between bodies of water and instigates further interaction between the different corners of the world. According to Shipwreck, the foreign merchants that traveled to Guangzhou resided in areas known as Fang, a custom office known as Shilifoshi was established within the port to supervise the foreign trade that took place. The different enforcements and regulations that were put in place became a testimony to the power of trade and how it can alter the governmental and overall structure of an area. Maritime cultural landscape can also relate to how the world of a region is changed to accommodate the interactions within the bodies of water, and how it can either enhance or destroy a community. Next, we move on to the city of Shilifoshi. After leaving Guangzhou, the Belitung Dhow was most likely on track to travel to Indonesia. The next port on the route was located in the island of Sumatra, in the Srivijaya Empire, which is also known by the Chinese as Shilifoshi. However, when the wreck was salvaged, it was found off the coast of the Belitung Island, which is slightly east of Sumatra. The reason for why the ship was off the route is still not fully discovered, but nonetheless, we will focus on the expected route that a typical dhow during this time period would most likely take in the Maritime Silk Road. This brings us back again to the eastern end of the island of Sumatra, which is mainly famous for its role in the expansion of Buddhism and in spreading knowledge to various individuals and regions. Overall, Shilifoshi was a vital way station on this trade route and linked China with India and much of the Middle Eastern regions. The city also controlled the passageway to the Strait of Malacca. In terms of commodities, Shilifoshi produced many Tang Dynasty Yu wares as well as Changsha wares that were also produced in Guangzhou. Many of these items that were discovered in the city's excavation sites were also found on the wreck, leading us to believe that the ship did make a stop here before sinking off the coast of Belitung. Also, the city was known beyond its production of wares to commodities such as medicine and spices. These two products have extreme value when it comes to modern times as well as ancient times, showing how trade has significantly shaped the course of our history. Maritime cultural archaeology aims to explain these influences and changes and how they have affected the development of civilizations and how they connect with one another. It's also truly interesting how while shipwrecks represent just a single moment in time, they can capture such a wide range of topics and time periods through the cultural remains that are found. Next, on the other end of the island of Sumatra is the province of Aceh in Indonesia that houses the city of Banda Aceh, which again, due to its location, has much access to maritime travelers. The trade and interaction that takes place within this region is tremendous and has gone a long way in shaping the global network of the 9th century onwards. Next, Banda Aceh is also famous for its role in the spread of Islam within Indonesia, since it is situated on the tip of the island closest to the Middle East. Notions of maritime cultural landscape also connect to the diffusion of ideas and ideologies, apart from just the spread of physical objects. Overall, Banda Aceh acted as another mediator between China and the Middle East in an area of great economic and social activity. After leaving Banda Aceh in the Indonesian region, the Dhow most probably made their way to China, stopping initially in the city of Galle on the southwestern island of Sri Lanka. Galle has been an important seaport ever since the time of the Belitung Dhow, and there is much evidence of Persian, Indian, and Chinese trade within the city. Mainly, the port is famous for its production of spices, which is a very, very common commodity in the Indian country. Within the Maritime Silk Road trade, Galle contributed different goods, most notably the spices that were mentioned, and welcomed many journeying ships throughout the years. On its way back to China, the Belitung Dhow most likely stopped within this region that exposed it, as well as other ships, to the high level of cultural diversity of Galle. Let's think about the Jewel of Muscat one more time. When the journey of this replicated dhow was designed, Galle was featured as an important location to port, enhancing its importance in ancient Chinese and global trading. Next, after leaving Galle, the ship would have made a shorter trip to Kollam, which is also known as Keelung. The city is located in the Indian state of Kerala, situated off the Arabic coast, and contains the two rivers of Kalalda and Ikikara. The area is famous for its lush greenland, which yield a lot of different crops and products such as spices. Also, it is the most known place for its large amount of fishing, which probably sparked the trade between the different regions. The port in Kollam really was a good stopping point on the way to Middle East. And now, the first stop within that actual region is Muscat, the capital of Oman. Located on the Gulf of Oman, this city features an important trading port that bridges the way between the West and East and acts as a transition point into the Persian Gulf. Its location at the mouth of the Gulf contributes to its attraction from ships before they enter that body of water. The city's main source of economic revenue comes from this trade that it participates in due to its amazing location. Maritime cultural landscape deals with how the simple location and its layout can completely influence the success or failure of a particular city. Apart from the Chinese merchants traveling to the Middle East, the city received a great deal of interaction from other local areas, most notably Persia. As was mentioned earlier, location is everything and can make or break a region's economy. This large-scale trade helped progress the culture and diversity of Muscat. Next, we move more north of the Persian Gulf to the port of Siraf, which is within the modern-day Bushehr province in Iran. The port was found to house one of the first mosques around the 9th century, which was around the same time the Belitung Dhow, revealing insight into the spread of different ideas and religious thoughts through maritime activities. Excavations of the region have revealed the presence of much trade in ancient times. African ivory and Indian stone are just a few examples of the trade. Starting around 185 AD, trade between this city and China really kicked off and continued to increase until the natural progression of trade routes shifted more towards the Red Sea. This shift later on in history really slowed down the activity within this port. In terms of maritime cultural landscape, the organization of land and sea play a major role in the interaction of societies. If it wasn't for the natural presence of different environmental features, some interactions would have been fueled and others prevented. However, let's move back to the time of the Belitung Dhow, during which this port was booming. One major reason for this was that small dhows were forced for the most part to maneuver near the coast, which is why Siraf initially continued to receive a lot of activity. Another interesting aspect of maritime archaeology deals with the human utilization of maritime space by boat. And, let's face it, this would not have been possible without a boat in the first place. We've talked about the ship design before and how it is most likely of Middle Eastern origin. Actually, this specific ship type of the Belitung Dhow was known to have existed within the Siraf region. Therefore, the wreck that was found revealed the possible use of an Iranian ship as well as for one of the first means of maritime transportation. Different pieces of evidence, including the ship's stitching and woodwork, support this claim. Nevertheless, the merchants of Siraf had a huge influence on the markets of the Middle East, and the region served as an important economic and cultural center of the Islamic world. Finally, we come to our last possible stop for this journey in the city of Basra in Iraq, which features very fertile agriculture in the production of goods such as rice, maize, corn, barley, wheat, and livestock. Historically, the port was known for its manufacture of Islamic wares that were definitely important products of trade. Also, these wares were found in Siraf as well as Basra, suggesting a decent amount of trade involvement between these two regions. The wreck was also found with a variety of Islamic wares, once again confirming the trade that took place between China and the Middle Eastern region. The layering of wares sparks again the concept of maritime cultural landscape, which also deals with chronological stratification. This concept reveals a lot of information about trade and how much occurred during different time periods. It's really important to note that trade really only reached its peak after the invention of dhows, since they were able to travel further distances. Without these boats, the communication between various areas would have been minimal, if at all present. This brings us back to our central phenomenon of a cultural landscape. Bodies of water serve as great boundaries between regions of far distances, and only through sophisticated means of transportation their interaction can be facilitated. This plays a major role in the development of individual societies that can prosper from the introduction of exotic commodities or material that would have otherwise been kept from them. Nevertheless, the port of Basra represents another checkpoint in the trade network between China and other regions. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation on the Belitung shipwreck, and I hope it was informative in revealing the different interactions that took place during the 9th century onwards between China and various regions along the road to the Middle East.